Hi there, boys and girls. Hope you're having a great afternoon. I'm on my front porch again, and if you look in the background, you can see my neighbor's tree, and it is changing colors, and a lot of them have already fallen. So you might notice that the branches aren't very full. There's a lot of bare spots on the branches where the leaves have already fallen, but they turn such a nice, pretty red. It's a beautiful tree in the fall. Well, I hope you're outside at some point today. It is really nice. I didn't even need my jacket. It is a really pretty day right now, and I think the whole weekend is going to be like this, so that's super lucky. Well, another silly book, and you might have noticed that I have a lot of silly books that I like to share with you all. This one is called The 7 Silly Eaters, and it's by Marianne Hoberman, and the pictures are by Marla Frazee. And so, what do you think this book is going to be about? Do you have any guesses? So there's lots of children on this book, and it's called The 7 Silly Eaters. Well, let's see. I also want you all to listen for rhymes, because this book is full of rhymes. Not so long ago, they say, a mother lived just like today. Mrs. Peters was her name. Her little boy was named the same. Now, Peter was a perfect son in every way except for one. So did you hear the rhymes on this page? Not long ago, they say, a mother lived just like today. Say, and today rhymed. Mrs. Peters was her name. Her little boy was named the same. Name and same rhyme. So listen for those in the pages to come. When Peter was just 1 year old, he did not like his milk served cold. He did not like his milk served hot. He liked it warm, and he would not drink it if he was not sure it was the proper temperature. Look at that little face. Mrs. Peters did not mind. She was a mother sweet and kind, and when his milk spilled on the floor, she patiently prepared some more. She'd take the bottle from the shelf and chuckle softly to herself. What a silly sort of eater is my darling baby Peter. When Peter had not yet turned 2, another baby, sweet and new, was born. Dear Lucy, small and fair, with big blue eyes and curly hair. But long before this child was grown, she had opinions of her own, of what she'd eat and what she'd not. She hated milk, both cold and hot, and warm was worst of all instead. Whenever Lucy dear was fed, she bellowed for pink lemonade, not from a can, oh no, homemade. But Mrs. Peters did not mind. She squeezed each lemon to its rinds while mopping milk up from the floor and patiently preparing more. She'd take the lemons from the shelf and giggle softly to herself. What a silly pair of eaters are Lucy dear and Peter Peters. Now Lucy grew and Peter grew till he was 3 and she was 2. And who was one? Why, little Jack, with eyes so brown and hair so black. A happy baby never cross, but all he'd eat was applesauce. Peeling apples by the pound, Mrs. Peters faintly frowned. She'd take the apples from the shelf and murmur weakly to herself, "What a silly bunch of eaters are Lucy, Jack, and Peter Peters." Oh my goodness. What do you think? Do you think that's good manners? I don't think so either. When I was a little girl, my mommy always wanted me to try a little bit of everything that she fixed, even if I thought I didn't like it. And you know what? I learned that I liked just about everything. It's always good to keep trying it, even if you think you don't like it. Peter, Lucy, and young Jack had another brother, Mac. Mac was charming, round, and plump, but if his oatmeal had a lump, Mac would dump it on the cat. Mrs. Peters didn't like that. I bet not. But since she loved her children 4, she'd strain the oatmeal 2 times more. She'd take it from the pantry shelf and mumble sadly to herself, "What a foolish group of eaters are all my precious little Peters." Did you see those birds? Before another year was through, who came along? Why, Mary Lou. She was darling, sweet, and bright, and had a healthy appetite. That is, as long as she was fed soft and squishy homemade bread. Poor Mrs. Peters got no rest, but still she did her very best. She'd take the flour from the shelf and mutter feebly to herself, "What a fussy bunch of eaters are all my lovely little Peters." A year rolled by and children grew. "They really are a splendid crew," sighed Mrs. Peters, pinning pins and diapering her brand new twins. Little sisters quick and smart, impossible to tell apart. But Flo liked poached eggs, Fran liked fried. If she mixed them up, they cried. Tired to the very bone, Mrs. Peters groaned a groan. She'd take the eggs down from the shelf and whisper weakly to herself, "What persnickety young eaters are all my 7 little Peters." It's getting harder for the mommy, isn't it? Now time went by as time will do, and as it passed, the children grew. The problem was that as they grew, their appetites kept growing too. But not their choice of what to eat. Each child continued to repeat. They wanted what they'd had before. The trouble was they wanted more. So now look, you can see the children are all getting a lot bigger, but they're still being very, very picky. That's not very kind to their mother. Oh no. Creamy oatmeal pots of it, homemade bread and lots of it. Peeling apples by the peck, Mrs. Peters was a wreck. Look at her, she's so tired, and her kitchen's a mess. She's even got laundry piling up. She needs some help, doesn't she? She wiped her brow and heaved a sigh. Another year was passing by. In fact, she realized with sorrow, her birthday would arrive tomorrow. Dreadily she shook her head and wearily went up to bed. Do you think the children know yet that they're not being very fair or very kind? Let's see. She thought the children had forgot her special day, but they had not. At crack of dawn, they all began to carry out their secret plan. Mrs. Peters would be fed a birthday breakfast in her bed. A breakfast made of all the foods that kept them in such happy moods. So look, the children are making a plan. So while their weary mother slept, down the stairs the children crept. And from the cupboards and the shelves, happily they helped themselves. Cheerfully they chopped and stirred, preparing what they each preferred. But despite the pains they took, since nobody knew how to cook, to measure things or make them hot, the more they tried, the worse it got. It's hard to cook a meal if you don't know how yet. And when you're a child, it's hard if there's not a grown-up helping. Wonder how this is going to turn out. First, Mac's oatmeal turned out lumpy, which made poor Mac turn grim and grumpy. In fact, the lumps got him so cross, he dumped them in Jack's applesauce. This bothered Jack so much, he threw it in the dough of Mary Lou, who tossed the mishmash that made straight into Lucy's lemonade. They are being so naughty, aren't they? I wonder what's going to happen. And that put her in such a huff, she poured that icky, sticky stuff into the double frying pan that held the eggs of Flo and Fran, who flung the hodgepodge on the spot into the milk in Peter's pot. So they've tried to make all their own favorite things that Mother's been making for them their whole life, but instead they ended up mixing it all together. But when they saw what they had done, they wished they never had begun. They hardly slept a wink that night, and still things hadn't turned out right. Even though they tried their best, it hadn't worked. They were depressed. They'd be in trouble too unless they found some place to hide the mess. The oven seemed the perfect spot. They all forgot it still was hot. They stuck the pot inside and then they all went back to bed again. So everything ended up in this pot. The oatmeal, the bread dough, the milk, the lemonade, the eggs, everything. The clock struck 6, but on they slept. Meanwhile, their mother softly stepped down to the kitchen, smell the smell. What could it be? She could not tell. It smelled so good she sniffed some more and opened up the oven door. She woke the children with her cries. They all came running in surprise. And in the kitchen, what they found was Mrs. Peters dancing around. And in the oven, no mistake, a pink and plump and perfect cake. You can see the children peeking around from the corner. Look how surprised Mrs. Peters is. and I just noticed. And look at the pets. Look, their bellies are full and they're sound asleep because I think they must have licked up all that mess that the children left on the floor. And as their mother danced with glee, she cried, "A birthday cake for me? A birthday cake still piping hot? To think I thought that you forgot. Now tell me please, how did you make this pink and plump and perfect cake, so high and light and smooth as silk?" "It's smooth as silk from all my milk," said Peter. Lucy said, "It's pink from all my lemonade, I think." "And from my apples," added Jack. "My oatmeal made it soft," said Mac. "My bread dough too," said Mary Lou. Said Fran and Flo, "As for its size, it was our eggs that made it rise." Then everybody sniffed some more and danced across the kitchen floor. Look, Mama's hugging every one of the children, and the daddy too. Did you see the cake in the pot? It did get plump and pink, didn't it? They put the cake upon a dish and lit the candles. "Make a wish," the children cried, "before you blow." And Mrs. Peters did just so. And what is more, her wish came true, as birthday wishes always do. And from that day to this 'tis said, the Peters family all is fed. A single simple meal, just one, a meal that's good for everyone. A meal on which they all agree, made from their secret recipe. They all take turns in mixing it. They all take turns in fixing it. It's thick to beat and quick to bake. It's fine to eat and fun to make. It's Mrs. Peters' birthday cake. Well, that was a silly story. And I'm sure glad that at the end, the children decided to do something super nice for their mom after how many days that she was so nice and made special meals for them. I hope that you all always eat and drink the things that your grown-ups give to you, because you wouldn't want to be like these silly eaters in this story, that's for sure. But it was funny to read. Well, I hope you have a fun day. I hope you get to enjoy some of this beautiful weather today and this weekend, and you get to read some books and listen for rhyming words. Sometimes they're in stories. They're not always in stories. There were a lot in this one. But maybe some of your other books have rhymes, and if not, sometimes you can just make silly rhymes when you're playing at home. So have a lot of fun, and I'm going to look forward to seeing you back on Tuesday for calendar time. Bye-bye.